A new subway station is coming to Moss Park neighborhood relatively soon as part of the Ontario Line, a $12 billion rapid transit project that will run across 15.5 kilometers connecting the Ontario Science Centre to Exhibition Ontario Place. Moss Park is one of the 15 station locations that will be built underground by Metrolinx, with the exception of the station's entrance that will be constructed above ground on the northwest corner of Queen and Shelburne by Infrastructure Ontario. The Moss Park Ontario Line station will connect a dense and fast-growing area of the city to the subway network. An estimated 7,300 people are expected to use Moss Park Station during the busiest travel hour. However, what are the benefits of this project for the Moss Park community? What is this $12 billion project of taxpayers' money going to mean for the people that live there? How are these infrastructure changes going to impact the neighborhood? These are some of the questions raised by Kumsa Baker, who grew up in Moss Park and is also an organizing member of the Toronto Community Benefits Network.
Like now is a lot different than when I grew up.
Kumsa was invited to speak about the importance of the community involvement in the decision-making process during a conversation and walk to the neighborhood event organized by Building Roots, a progressive grassroots social venture. The event was held last month on September 11th, 2021, at the Moss Park Market, inviting the community to learn more about the Moss Park subway station.
Everyone excited to go for a little walk in the neighborhood? How many of you are aware about this new Ontario Line project worth $12 billion of taxpayers' money? I don't know how many of you know, but Moss Park is actually going to be one of the locations for a station. But also the surrounding changes that are also coming into the neighborhood. For me, myself, I've actually grew up in this neighborhood, and what it looks like now is a lot different than when I grew up, especially in the surrounding area. If you go to places like Regent Park, many of you know there's been a big revitalization over the past 10 years, and it's going to continue for another 10 to 15 years. To the south, there's been lots of development happening in Corktown, along King Street, and so these type of developments and changes are also going to be coming relatively soon to Moss Park. A lot of times when it comes to development, it's usually focused on developers and government, who make decisions on behalf of the community. And through some of the really inspiring work and leadership of people like Waleed, they've created a community voice in the process. To not only be consulted, but also to be influencing decisions. A lot of times, if you're not at the table, you're probably going to be on the menu, right? And for Moss Park, how do we ensure that the community members have a seat at the table when these decisions are happening, and how can we make sure that our voices are heard? And some of the questions to really reflect on, I think, is, what does Moss Park mean to you, as a community? What are some of the changes that you're seeing in the neighborhood? What is your future vision for Moss Park? What would you like to see? What is missing in Moss Park? And those are all really important things to reflect on, and in future meetings, through this neighborhood walk, as well as part of upcoming consultations like the one on the 30th. You can reflect on those questions and really come forward with your ideas. Because it'll be really important to help shape, a future vision for Moss Park that we can all support and get behind.
One of the concerns among the Moss Park and nearby communities is the land speculation as a result of the upcoming developments. Andrew Berman, member of the Corktown Residents and Businesses Association and publisher of the Bridge community newspaper, has made an extensive urban research related to the impacts of the new transit project in the downtown east area.
In tandem with this subway will also be massive land speculation as properties will rise significantly just on the word of this infrastructure project. Nothing has been done, and Moss Park has already been bought and sold several times over, with developers coming in, purchasing it from the old guard, people who have been here for decades, and now beginning to put their own foot in this neighborhood, which obviously their main concerns are going to be their bottom line, and less so of what they're going to contribute long term. So as Kumsa pointed out, across the street, you're going to have 3 large high-rise towers, 24, 25, and 33 stories, built by 2 big developers, One Properties and Tricon. Not only that, but you have the redevelopment of 191 and 201 Sherburne, which was originally built in the 80s, and that's a Metcalf. That's now going to be owned by Collier, which is another management company. Not to mention the WE properties that we all know at Queen and Parliament have also been sold. This was just happened a few days ago. So the money is moving in even before this project even starts. The cards are being stacked against this community.
The Metrolinx Transit project will give a unique opportunity for community engagement, and Moss Park residents get together to express their opinions and thoughts on how the community could be benefited from the project.
This is the opportunity because there's going to be a lot of eyes and ears in this community for the first time in probably a very long time. And this gives a very unique opportunity for this community to band together and not only speak about the infrastructure projects and development, but issues that have long beset this community. Health and safety, crime, the permeation of the opioid crisis, and the lack of services to people in Toronto community housing, but also to those who are underhoused. So this is a really unique opportunity, and I can't stress this enough because as a chair of a ratepayers association in Corktown, which has a long history being a cohesive unit, it's easy for us to get together and speak to one another. But Moss Park, as many of you all know, is fairly disjointed. There's a lot of interests here. Business interests, resident interests, small business interests. And sometimes they don't always congeal together. But the subway gives us something we can all kind of rally around and then express our own opinions and thoughts on how we want to benefit from that project.
Toronto Community Benefits is partnering with Building Roots and other groups in the area to form the Moss Park Benefits Coalition.
The Moss Park Coalition is the first real attempt at bringing this community together, in decades, as far as I know, and I've done a lot of research in this community. So please tell your neighbors, please tell your friends, speak to the business owners that this is ongoing. We really want to usher in something special here. And when the time comes to have these conversations with Metrolinx, with the government, with our local councillor, with Infrastructure Ontario, we'll be ready to have those conversations and be ready to sit down with them as equals. And that's the real important thing, as equals, not as subservient and the master, but as equals, because the government, they do work for us, the police, they work for us. Theoretically speaking, they don't always do that, but it's why we need to speak out and speak up and be loud.
Walid Kogali, member of the Regent Park Community Benefits Coalition, encouraged the Moss Park neighbors to take this opportunity to come together, to get organized, and join the Moss Park Benefits Coalition to start having conversations on what sort of benefits does the community want.
Neighbors came together and said, this is what we want. So I want to encourage all my neighbors in Moss Park to take this opportunity to come together, to get organized, to join the Moss Park Coalition, to start having a conversation about what sort of community benefits do you want? What sort of Moss Park do you want to build? I don't want Doug Ford to build Moss Park. I don't want one political party to dictate what happens in our community. I want the residents of Moss Park to dictate, to decide what happens in their community. So I want to encourage all of you to join the Moss Park Coalition. Let's work together to build those priorities, to build what Moss Park we want. And what we want is we want the community to actually inspire what is developed. So we don't want developers to plan how a community was going to be built. We wanted the community to do so. And so what we did is we started that work by setting up a community benefits coalition. A couple of years ago, back in 2018, the idea, 2019 is when we really got started through our meetings and got a lot of milestones accomplished, such as the community benefits framework, which was an agreement with TCC on how community benefits were going to be distributed, right? Which group was going to do that. But what we also did is we did some important work before that. We talked to our neighbors. We found out what our collective priorities were. You know what we heard from our community? Community space. People wanted community governed space. They wanted space that's after 5 o'clock, there'll be activities for our youth, for our seniors, you know, for folks to get the help. So just that everything shuts off at 5 o'clock. What we also heard was we wanted sustainable funding. We wanted to make sure that programs in our community got funding. We also wanted to make sure that, you know what, we had hard targets. We did not just get false commitments, that we hired people from our communities. So we wanted to make sure that 50% of full-time jobs created, people in our community got those jobs. Apprenticeships. We wanted hard commitments. That's something else that we wanted. The other things that we found that we wanted was we wanted to make sure that the community was not just being consulted, that they were decision makers in this process. So the selling off of public assets is part of an agenda that is not in support of communities' needs. Because when you sell off public assets, what happens? What happens to the community? They're poor, right? And that's what's happening across this city. So we need to ensure that when the developments happen here in Moss Park, that private ownership, right, is not the solution. It's not what the government's going to push, because that's what the agenda, an austerity agenda, is always focused on selling off public assets, right? So we have a responsibility as members of this community to defend public assets. So I want to encourage all of you folks to get involved in this walk so we can find out what sort of developments are happening in our community. And I want to ask all of you to think about what makes Moss Park home to you. Okay, let's get started.
We can stop here. So right here, that's where the entrance of the subway will be built. That's where it will be a large box, and that's where the location of the station box will be. The subway will run on the park side. Now, so not under the streets, but under the park, because it's already owned by the city. So the subway is going to be built very deep underground, deeper than all of our existing infrastructure, including the existing subway. So it'll be going even deeper, right at the bedrock, to the lowest you can go. And it will run underneath where all the trees are. So likely all those trees are going to have to be removed. And half the park space is going to be a giant hole in the ground, because it's going to be used as a staging site. So material will be coming in, dirt will be coming out. So that means half the park will not be usable until the completion of the subway, which is likely to happen near the end of the decade, so 2030. So massive. We're talking huge bulldozers. The whole gamut.
Please do not forget to like, comment, and share to our channel. Follow us on all our social media platforms. And for more information, please check out our website.